Hi everybody, we're gonna start the program now, and we are having a live stream. So this is being live streamed to people really from all over the world have registered to hear this presentation tonight. So if you could take a seat, we'll get this started. How's the sound? Okay? Is the sound okay? Can everybody hear me? Do you need a mic? Do we want a mic? I think we're okay. Thomas is a professor, so he knows how to project. We have a mic here for the live stream, so they'll be fine. So could you be quiet in the back? We're going to start the program. Thanks. So welcome everybody. My name is Lissa Weinman. I am a member of the Windham World Affairs Council. I'm also a partner here at 118 Eliot, which donates the space for Windham World Affairs Council. So pleased to have you here tonight and facing the bad weather. Thank you so much for being here. I think you all know Windham World Affairs Council promotes dialogue on international affairs. It's been around for about 65 years. It has an illustrious past and a really exciting present with a new board and new members, and we encourage all of you to join if you haven't. Your membership donation supports our work. We in turn help support the Peace Jam Club at Brattleboro Union High School. You'll see some of the high school students are here tonight to help out. And they're going to be doing a bike drive and a fun run this spring that we're trying to help them get off the ground a little bit. But they're doing pretty well on their own. So we work with the Nobel Peace Laureate Jody Williams, who lives in the area, and she helped found that club. And it's meant to study the lives of Nobel Peace Laureates and do community peacemaking projects. So we're really happy to have you students here. Thank you so much for your help. We have some benefits to membership of Windham World Affairs Council. We do monthly salons that are just open for members. They're wine and cheese and people talk and network, and it's quite pleasant. They usually happen here, but sometimes at Center Congregational Church and other places. And I think that, since we've lost Marlborough College and we lost the School for International Training, Windham World Affairs Council has really taken center stage in trying to bring international discussions to this corner of the world. And by virtue of our live stream, we're able to really reach a much larger audience too. So thank you for everyone who's participating online as well. The next event coming up is Friday, April 17th, here at 118 Eliot. America Alone or America the Global Cop? A conversation with author John Pfeffer, who's the Director of Foreign Policy and Focus at the Institute for Policy Studies in Washington, D.C. That, considering what's going on now with the U.S. and the world, that should be a pretty interesting discussion. So I'd urge you to come at 6:30 p.m. Friday, April 17th, about a month from today. It's my real honor to introduce Thomas Bass. I read his book, Return to Fukushima, about a year ago when it came out, and I was very impressed. I sit on the Vermont Yankee nuclear decommissioning panel. I study nuclear waste, which we've got quite a large concentration of, just 6 miles south of us here at the old Vermont Yankee nuclear plant, which is now a Vermont Yankee nuclear waste site. There's really no plan for the nuclear waste. It's going to be a long time before it ever moves, if ever. Yet our nation is embarking on a whole new program to create more nuclear reactors, new designs, smaller reactors. It's really old technology, as Thomas talks about in the book. There's really not a lot that's new that's happened. Smaller reactors still make a lot of waste. We still don't have a solution for nuclear waste. And what I've come to really recognize in my work with nuclear waste and looking at these issues by virtue of serving on the panel is that nuclear energy is so economically inefficient, requires so much government support, the markets don't support it, insurance companies won't touch it. Why do we do it? Well, we do it because it supports our nuclear weapons complex. And I recently attended a summit on nuclear deterrence in Washington, D.C., which, thanks to a donation from a member of Windham World Affairs Conference, I was able to attend because it was a very expensive conference. And I got to sit with the National Security Agency and the Department of Energy officials and the whole tech people and all of the companies, the Honeywell and the National Lab people. Our nuclear enterprise, as it's referred to, is going like it has not gone before. We are investing up to $1 trillion over the next few years in a whole new generation of nuclear weapons at an unprecedented level of production. People at Los Alamos Lab are working 24/7 on producing the plutonium pits required for nuclear weapons. They're starting a new complex in Savannah, Georgia that will require billions of dollars. These are our taxpayer dollars, and the choice to do this is being made for us, and it's happening faster and at a level of investment that we have really never seen before since the Manhattan Project and superseding the expenses of the Manhattan Project. So it's really a very interesting time to be looking at what's happening in a very technologically advanced society like Fukushima, with a reactor that failed. And whether it failed due to human error or nature, I'll let Thomas get into that, because he gets into this idea of accidents and why accidents can be expected to happen at nuclear reactors. And in fact, we're overdue for an accident, which he prefers to refer to as incidents. But Thomas has a long history as a freelance writer. He was born and raised in Ohio. His father was part of the nuclear enterprise. And so he lived and breathed it growing up. But he went on to the University of Chicago, where he studied consciousness, and he ended up getting a doctorate in the history of consciousness from UC Santa Cruz. And he's been writing for publications for a long time. He has 8 books that he's published. Many of them have been New York Times notable books of the year. He has written about censorship in Vietnam. He wrote a book called The Spy Who Loved Us that was serialized in The New Yorker, who John le Carré said was just one of the best thrillers he'd ever read. He wrote a book, Camping with the Prince, and Other Tales of Science in Africa, where he traveled around Africa and looked at science projects in Africa. He wrote books about gaming in Las Vegas, the Eudaemonic Pie, where he actually, with a group, beat the roulette wheel using computer technology, and it was the first time ever. And he wrote a book about it that was very well received. The Predictors also was about how to beat, betting on the world financial markets. So he's been interested in this idea of like gambling and betting. And it's interesting that now he's turned to this issue of the nuclear enterprise and what it means for us and our collective consciousness. He, as I said, went to the University of Chicago as an undergrad. Maybe I did not say that before the UC Santa Cruz. And he is currently a professor at SUNY Albany and the professor of English. Film rights to his books have been sold to many different companies, Focus Features, Columbia Pictures. He's appeared on any number of news programs, Good Morning America, BBC, CNN. Noam Chomsky has commented on Return to Fukushima that it's an amazing book that bears on the very survival of the planet. He just wrote a very lengthy and well-researched piece in the Bulletin for Atomic Scientists on this 15th anniversary of Fukushima. He traveled to Fukushima as part of that in January of this year, just a couple of months ago. And that was his third trip to Fukushima. He began going in 2018, and he's gone every few years and developed a lot of relationships there and has been studying it all that time. He also traveled to Chernobyl, and he has compared Chernobyl to Fukushima, which I'm sure we'll talk about. That work for the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientist was supported by the Pulitzer Center for Disaster Reporting. He's just has a wealth of experience, and he's really delved into this issue of Fukushima. He's got a lot of slides. He's estimated now, with the help of the Bulletin, he's estimated that the cost of the Fukushima disaster is going to top $1 trillion, and it will take over the next 100 years. But he's not optimistic that it will ever be over. He's studied these exclusion zones. There's a lot of them, and he catalogs them in the back of the book. There's a whole appendix. I would urge you to buy a copy to support Thomas and everyone's books. Thank you so much for bringing the books here. It really is an amazing read. It's a great read. You get a lot of background on fusion and who's talking about what when it comes to nuclear. So I encourage you to buy a copy of the book and have Thomas sign it while he's here. Red will be here until there's a reception afterward. And also Meryl Sovner, the chair of Windham World Affairs Council, is going to be delivering a special message to us at the end of the program. So I would encourage you to stick around for that. So without any further ado, and that's been a lot of ado, I would like to introduce Thomas A. Bass.
There isn't much more for me to say after that introduction. That was remarkable. Thank you very much to Lisa for organizing this. Thanks to the board members and everyone who's helping tonight, the high school students. Thank you for turning up, showing up on Friday the 13th. There's a great deal of expertise in this room. You people are all nuclear warriors and fighters and experts. The combined intelligence in here is far greater than anything I can offer, other than perhaps a singular perspective. First of all, Fukushima is not very far away from here. It may seem like it's the other side of the world, but those were boiling water reactors built by General Electric that blew up. Your Vernon reactor was a boiling water reactor built by General Electric, and you're lucky it didn't blow up. But I understand you people had a whole system of sirens here in town, and you're within what would have been your nuclear exclusion zone. So as I present this tonight, why don't you just imagine that I'm not showing you pictures of Japan, I was showing you pictures of what your town would have looked like if it had become a nuclear exclusion zone, which is not all that unlikely, considering that these GE boiling water reactors, whistleblowers from GE announced immediately after they began to commercialize them, most dangerous reactors ever built, completely inadequate design, Lisa and I were trying to figure this out. We have 20 of them still operating in the United States? I don't know the exact number, but it's absolutely remarkable that any are still around. So anyway, I'm going to talk a bit about Fukushima. Lisa wants me to talk about everything in the world. She wants me to talk about small modular reactors, fusion reactors, military industrial complex, the fact that civilian and nuclear technology has never divorced itself from military technology, or as I put it, atoms for peace never succeeded in being other than joined at the hip with atoms for war. And the two enterprises support each other. They're maintained. You need the civilian technology to keep the military technology going. The United States, the tritium for our hydrogen bombs is now made in TVA civilian reactors. So there's not even the pretense that they are separate enterprises at the moment. So
Thomas, could you step back for just a bit?
Oh yes, sorry.
Remain in the light a bit.
Oh yes, sorry. Yes.
I think it's okay.
All right. But I'm farther from these people without a microphone. All right. So anyway, as I show these pictures of Fukushima, just imagine that, it's not Fukushima. Imagine that it's Brattleboro, okay? It's a bit hillier here. and your houses are not quite as well kept as the houses in Japan. And otherwise, and this is coastal and you're not coastal, but otherwise you really could imagine that what happened there could very well have happened here. So anyway, our first slide, if we could. So 15 years ago, there was a 9.0 earthquake that created a tsunami, washed ashore, washed up to 20 miles inland, and killed 20,000 people on the east coast of Japan, Honshu, the main island. Next slide. So here's the utter and absolute devastation of that tsunami as it washed ashore. As I say, killing 20,000 people, many of whose bodies were never found. They were washed out to sea. Next slide. This is interesting because you have, of course, the not one, not two, but three nuclear reactors at Fukushima melted down. A fourth reactor exploded. It did not have any nuclear fuel in it, but it exploded anyway. And what's interesting about this, here you have Unit 1 exploding, here you have Unit 3 exploding, and you'll notice Unit 3 is exploding much more boisterously than Unit 1 because it was burning MOX fuel, mixed oxide fuel, actually fuel made out of reprocessed plutonium, which all the bright lights that were raining propaganda down around our ears at the moment maintain is really a good idea. We should really be reprocessing our fuel and burning mixed oxide fuel with plutonium in it. Well, it's really a stupid idea because here you have that reactor blowing up, and that's when the Prime Minister of Japan, 150 miles away, is organizing the evacuation of Tokyo. Because that's a truly lethal explosion. And there's even, and what's also interesting about this photo, this was released on the 10th anniversary of Fukushima. Every time there's a nuclear disaster, I refuse to use the word accident because they're not accidents, they're actually disasters. They happen every 10 to 15 years. We know they're going to happen and we're overdue for the next one. But anyway, we still actually do not know why Fukushima blew up or what occasioned these three reactors melting down. And in fact, if they began to melt down, if they began to fail from the earthquake before the arrival of the tsunami, then no reactor in the world is safe. The Japanese want to maintain, they want to pretend that it was the tsunami, that was the wave that knocked out Fukushima. But we actually do not know what caused the three reactors to melt down. Anyway, what's interesting about this is a high-resolution photo. This is a reconstructed photo. It took them a decade. It took the Japanese 10 years to release this photo. And the Japanese, I don't want to get into this, I don't want to dilate on it. Censorship is very strict in Japan. They outlawed the use of the word meltdown for a month. They pretended that there was no meltdown. As I say, we still do not actually know what happened at Fukushima. It took them a decade to release this high-definition photo. We still don't actually know what's happening. I actually have my pointer here. I could use this thing. We don't know whether there are two explosions. Is there one here and another one here? What's this concrete falling down here? We still don't know. Anyway, next one. Here's an aerial shot, overview shot of the reactors exploding. So you have, what do you have? I think you have 2 and 4 that have exploded. Yeah, I'm not sure which ones. Next slide, we'll get a closer view of it. Here you get, you can actually see what the reactors look like after the roofs have been blown off of them. These GE reactors, they do not have concrete containments on them. They have sheet metal roofs. When the sheet metal roofs blew off, on top of the reactors, you have the spent fuel pools. The spent fuel pools are loaded with numerous reactor cores. And here they are exposed to the sky, exceedingly dangerous. And the other thing to note, you do not, my fellow journalists are really a very credulous lot. They tend to reproduce stenographic press releases and reports put out as propaganda by the pro-nuclear activists. But anyway, the news we've been getting for the past 15 years out of Fukushima is tremendous amount of progress. I mean, who describes it as an ongoing disaster? Who describes it as an exceedingly dangerous part of the world? It's still dumping large amounts of radioactivity into the ocean, still is surrounded by a nuclear exclusion zone that's uninhabited, still is surrounded by ghost towns. There are 2 fuel pools on top of the reactors in Fukushima that have not yet been unloaded. The site is it took them 12 years to remove this chimney. This chimney was so radioactive, they had to build special robots that would cut down this chimney and remove it. And that alone took something like 12 years.
Are the pools still full of water?
Yeah, the fuel pools are, yes, they're full of water. Fortunately, that was an accident. It was due to a leaky faucet that the fuel pool at reactor unit number 4 actually maintained its water. It was thought at some point that it had run out of water, but it was due to a leak, an accident, that it did not run out of water. So the 2 fuel pools that are on top of the reactors, right up here, are filled with water. And were they ever to run out of water, you would get a fuel pool fire, you would get an enormous release of radioactive material, and you might indeed be looking at the evacuation of Tokyo. I mean, it's not over yet.
Is this a recent photo?
No, because the Japanese government is embarrassed by these photos, and so I believe that they put tin roofs on top of these reactors. But they certainly don't look any better underneath the tin roofs. For the Japanese, this is a first world country. They were running 54 reactors. A third of the country's power came from nuclear reactors. And, 3 Mile Island could be blamed on incompetent workers. Chernobyl could be blamed on inferior Soviet technology. Fukushima, you can't blame it on anything other than General Electric and a first world country and Tokyo and Japanese engineers who made a fair number of errors in building this plant. Could we have the next slide? Yeah, here are the errors, and they're quite visible here. First of all, these are the Abukuma Mountains here, but you'll notice, if you look really closely, what the engineers from GE did was to cut down the mountains. See that? They cut down the mountains, and you can see it over here, the mountains behind you. They cut down the mountains to put the reactor and the pumps and the backup generators down on the coast. And that's a cost-saving measure. That's cheaper than pumping water uphill. So you cut down the mountain, you put the reactors on the coast, and the backup generators and pumps right down on the water, and then you build an inadequate seawall. I mean, that tsunami that washed over here was 50 or 60 feet high. The seawall was only 13 feet high, something like that. Completely inadequate. And so you have one error compounded on top of another error. It's a disaster waiting to happen. And then you have units 1, 2, 3, and 4. And all of them blew up. And these 2 are the ones with fuel pools still on top of them. Next one. And here's the evacuation zone for the Fukushima Daiichi. And you notice that the little rings are drawn here. That's how everyone draws nuclear exclusion zones. You draw nice circles, but then you notice that it all depends on which way the wind is blowing. And because the government didn't tell people which way the wind was blowing, people from Futaba and Okuma, these 2 towns, they evacuated in this direction. So, and here's Fukushima City. The entire district is called Fukushima. The plant is Fukushima. So they had to keep evacuating. They evacuated here, then they evacuated here, then they evacuated here. Each time they had to keep evacuating because the government didn't inform anybody which way the wind was blowing and what exactly was happening. And you'll also notice, I won't dilate on this, the Germans have released, Der Spiegel released this map. This is 15 microsieverts per hour. That's a large amount of radiation. It's not a lethal amount, it's just a very large amount. And it requires evacuation. Among all the propaganda that's raining down around our ears at the moment, I heard this just on the radio recently, that there was actually no need to evacuate Fukushima. The 2,000 people died as a result of the evacuation. They died from stress and misery and unhappiness and trauma. Well, the stress, misery, and trauma is the result of evacuating because the reactors are blowing up. And so to pretend that you often hear this, no one died at Fukushima. You'll hear that a lot. No one died at Fukushima. Well, excuse me, not yet. Or maybe, what about the 2,000 people? Or what about the nuclear exclusion zone? Or what about the 160,000 atomic refugees were evacuated from this area? And so, anyway, next slide. Yeah, here are the atomic refugees, as I say, 160,000 people evacuated from a dozen towns around Fukushima. Here they're gathered in a gymnasium. The next one. And then here's what the towns look like around Fukushima at this very moment. They look like this. They are ghost towns, they're abandoned towns, they are tumbling into the ground, roofs are collapsing. No one is living in these towns because the radiation is still exceedingly high. It's still in the nuclear exclusion zone. Next slide. Yeah, here's a shot that I took in the town of one of the nearby towns. Yes, next one. And the houses are now, these feral radioactive pigs are now roaming around in Fukushima. People used to hunt. They used to hunt and eat these pigs. They used to forage for their food. As much as a third of people's diets used to come from foraged food. That's all now too radioactive to eat. Next one. Yeah, this is interesting. This is a shot that I took. If you see right here, there's a brand on this horse. The brand indicates that the horse is radioactive and you shouldn't eat it. The Japanese eat horse meat, but this horse has been branded. Next one. Yeah, these are some now friends of mine. They are burying the ashes of his aunt. She died in the housing that was given to people evacuated from the area. She lay in the house for 2 weeks before someone discovered her. They'd come back to bury her ashes in the town of Futaba. What's interesting is this sign, nuclear energy for a bright future. And he's the one who came up with that slogan when he was in 7th grade. And here, nuclear energy for a bright, they put it over the main street of town. And here's our next slide. Nuclear energy for a disastrous future. Is his decision on that sign. The sign has been taken down, melted with torches and destroyed and dumped, rather than kept as some kind of memento of the mistake made by the town of Futaba. Next one. So Japan, I showed you the seawall in front of the nuclear reactors, which was entirely inadequate. Japan, to make up for the inadequacies of that seawall, they built 300 miles of seawalls looking like this, all along the east coast of Japan. This is a country that relies on seafood and fish and its relationship to the ocean. Well, you can't even see the ocean anymore due to these massive seawalls that have been constructed. Next one. Yeah, and here's a radiation detector, microsieverts per hour, solar cell running it in front of an abandoned house. All throughout the nuclear exclusion zone, there are radiation detectors giving you readings. So just imagine here, if those sirens had gone off in Brattleboro, you might, when you went to the health food store It would probably have a radiation detector in front of it, telling you which way the wind was blowing and how many microsieverts per hour you were getting. And the next one. And then as you were driving over to Bennington along the highways, instead of the road sign that would say Bennington, you'd get a road sign that would give you microsieverts per hour and tell you don't open your car window as you're driving over in that direction. All along the major highway, there are these road signs giving you the readouts. They're giving you gamma radiation, external gamma radiation. It's now known that the internal microparticles are far more dangerous than the gamma radiation. Again, the Japanese government is pretending that's not the case. They shut down they refused to finance the laboratory that was making those findings. And that particular researcher has now been banished from Japan. Anyway, next one. Yeah, so in the nuclear exclusion zone around the reactors, what the Japanese embarked on was this pharaonic, massive project to scoop up all the radioactive topsoil. And if you remove 5 centimeters of topsoil, you can lower, which is full of cesium-137, you can actually lower the radiation in the area. So they've scraped up a massive amount of topsoil, something like a quarter of the Suez Canal, or as much topsoil as all of the pyramids of Egypt. I don't know, I ran the numbers at some point. But they had 100,000 workers scooping up topsoil. So the next one.
Where did they put this?
Well, I'll show you where they put it. I'll show you where they put it. We'll get to it. All right, so here's an abandoned house. This is a nice house, right? It's a really nice house. We look very good here in Brattleboro. And they cut down the trees and they bagged everything. And then the next one. And here's where they carried it off. And then the next one. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Get a load of this. Get a load of that. And so
Those are all bags.
yeah, those are all bags.
Isn't the radiation leaking out of the bag?
Oh, of course it's leaking out of the bags. This area is prone to massive winter storms that lash the coastal areas. The bags leak, break down the bags, they flow into the streams. And not to mention, I showed you those mountains. They could not scrape up the topsoil in the mountains, so the mountains are a huge reserve of radioactive material that washes down to the coastal area every time it rains. But anyway, many of these bags have now been broken down and put into a massive storage area, but I'll get to that toward the end of my presentation, what's actually happening to that soil. It's mandated, Japan has a law that mandates that all of this radioactive material, all of this, has to be removed from Fukushima. And here are the reactors down here, by the way. They have to be removed too by roughly 2050. And no one has volunteered to take any of that. So Japan has come up with the idea that this radioactive material will be spread across the entire country. And I'll show you a picture of that in a minute and talk about that.
Spread across what? The whole.
All of Japan.
Oh.
It will be used for landfill and construction sites and railroad embankments. And I'm going to show you a picture later. A load of this soil was recently dumped into the Prime Minister's flower bed in Tokyo. And this soil is supposedly only slightly radioactive, and it's actually been renamed by the government Happy Soil. It's not happy soil, but I'll get to that in a bit. Next slide. Yeah, this is interesting because Reuters did this map. Okay, so these are Japan is desperate to resettle the nuclear exclusion zone. They're desperate for people to forget that this disaster is ongoing. And so here, these areas have been reopened to settlement. And here's Itate. I'll show you that one in particular. I'll show you why some people consider this highly dangerous to have reopened these areas to resettlement. And the government, if you want to move into those areas, the government will subsidize your housing. They'll subsidize your going to local restaurants. They'll pay for your gym membership. Some of you might want to consider it. Or
Healthcare?
yeah, it might have even happened here in Brattleboro. Who knows? Okay, so the next one. Yeah, so what's interesting about Fukushima, I mean, it's kind of like the Wild West of Japan, is how I compare it, how I describe it. Japan is a very rigid, formal country, meticulous, well organized, except for Fukushima, where, I mean, if you're willing to stay there or settle there, you could open a citizen science laboratory. You could open an art space, a museum. You could get your government subsidies and do whatever you wanted to. You could try your hand at opening a restaurant. I don't know, in a way. So this is Ai Kimura. She runs the Mother's Radiation Laboratory. And she has a budget of $1 million a year that comes from donations. And the entire laboratory is run by women. It's run by mothers. And they don't believe anything that the government tells them. And they have, next slide. This is soil gathered from a schoolyard. And the government was maintaining that the schoolyard had been scraped up, decontaminated, and was now safe for the students to return to. Well, the mothers didn't believe it. So what do the mothers do? They scrape up the topsoil, they take it to this laboratory, the Mother's Radiation Lab, which, I mean, there's some sophisticated, equipment around here. It's a lot more sophisticated when I visited in January. They're actually the only laboratory in Japan that's looking at the radioactive material being dumped out of the Fukushima reactors. Here's the Mother's Radiation Laboratory, which is doing, you can take your samples, and then the next slide. Here's another radiation laboratory, and this one, as you notice here, people have brought blue buckets of soil from their farms, and when the lab opens, they'd like you to take in the blue soil, the buckets, and figure out how much radioactivity is in the soil, and whether you can start growing rice again, or whatever you're supposed to do. So anyway, next slide. Here's the founder of this radiation laboratory. And what's interesting here, this is Takanori Kobayashi, and he's got these maps on the wall. And every year, volunteers walk all over the nuclear exclusion zone, mapping what's dangerous and what's not dangerous. The red areas are highly dangerous. You're not supposed to go in there. The blue areas, not quite so dangerous. And of course, what I like about this is that this radiation lab is also doubling as a kind of daycare center. And, the kids are there. The radiation lab is in another room around the corner, and so on. Next slide. Here's a woman. She runs a puppet show about nuclear energy, but she also runs this little store selling produce. And what's interesting, all the produce has been measured for radioactivity. So you can tell your green beans how many microsieverts of cesium-137 are in your green beans, and in this little store. Okay, next one. Here's another chap I spent a lot of time with. He was actually a cleaner at Fukushima for 36 years. He mopped up radioactive spills. He knows all about radioactivity and contamination. Here he is in his house, and he's mapped every square inch of his house. Like those maps I was showing you. And he can never get the radioactivity in his house down to zero. He's a professional cleaner, spent 36 years doing it. Can never do it because the windows leak, the wind blows, the soil all around him is contaminated. He's got a whole house full of radiation detectors. I'll show you some of the bigger ones, I think, in some of the other
So
slides.
how's his health?
How's his
his
health?
health and
I don't know,
his family's
he's an old man. You get this phenomenon, there's something called Fukushima divorce, where his wife refuses to live there, and he's gone back, and he spends his whole days roaming around. He specializes in fishing and measuring the radioactivity in the fish. All the freshwater fish in Fukushima are out of bounds. You can't eat them. They're too radioactive. Well, his hobby, his job, his dedication, his religious calling is to pull fish out of the rivers and verify that they are in fact too radioactive to eat.
The people, do they
so-
get tested for radioactivity?
The people.
The people,
Do they get tested?
do they,
Oh, do the people get tested?
yeah.
The Japanese did not do that. There was some scanning of people immediately after the disaster. But I'll show you some testing later on, in the later slides. Can we have the next one? Yeah, I showed you that town of Iitate, which has been reopened. It's been resettled. And this chap, he's known as the measuring fanatic, is his nickname in Japanese. Because look, he's got a vest full of radiation detectors. And he publishes a blog every day of this. Here we are, we're collecting soil samples. We're out in the forest, we're getting mushrooms, right? And next one. Oh yeah, here's a mushroom that we foraged. This is a famous bull's nose mushroom in Japan. They eat 200 species of mushrooms. The limit, you don't have to know what the numbers mean. The limit for food in Japan is 100 becquerels. Okay, becquerels, it's a measurement of radioactivity. This particular mushroom, and I didn't believe it when we measured it, and I took it to another lab, and I verified it with a second measurement, measured 88,000 becquerels. It's an astounding amount of contamination. And in fact, the contamination can increase from one year to the next. There's something called bioaccumulation. So it's not as if, these are becoming less radioactive. There are years when they could be more radioactive. Yeah?
Are they not sucking up some of it?
They are.
Like the
Yeah,
fungus in
yeah,
Chernobyl?
from the soil.
I mean, they're maybe helping with the removal of it by taking it in?
You mean kind of like oysters or something, like cleaning
Yeah,
the
like
water or
it's-
something
it's-
like that?
Because isn't there a fungus in Chernobyl that's eating
Yes,
the radioactivity?
it has a name. It has a
Yeah.
nickname of Conan the Barbarian fungus or something, because it thrives on radioactivity. Yeah, and people are experimenting with growing that to eat up our radioactivity.
Maybe
They
that's-
haven't succeeded yet. they haven't succeeded. And in fact, people are probably still eating these mushrooms, right? A fair amount of forgetfulness or willing not to know or just carrying on or whatever it is.
Are they ever checked for export? Do they ever check products?
Oh, well, exports, yes. China and Russia ban produce from Fukushima. Lots of countries ban produce from Fukushima. But, it's interesting because it works in the other direction. The Japanese, whenever they get canned fish out of Europe, for example, or blueberries or whatever, those are radioactive. They're too radioactive for the Japanese. I told you the limit for food in Japan is 100 becquerels. The limit in the United States is 1,200 becquerels. In other words, the Japanese would not go near a good bit of the food that we eat in the United States.
Before the nuclear age, were there measurable amounts of radioactivity in the environment and in the foods we eat?
Well, there's background radiation.
Bes-
Yeah,
Yeah.
which has doubled in the nuclear age, the atomic age. So-called background radiation is now double what it used to be. Because it's not really background radiation, it's actually been created by thermonuclear bombs, atomic bombs, blowing up in Polynesia and Bikini Island and so on. Next slide. Oh yeah, here's some radioactive persimmons. The entire crop had to be destroyed. This is something like 37 miles from the nuclear reactors. And once again, it just depends on which way the wind is blowing. You guys here in Brattleboro, you're in big trouble. You're too close to Vernon. Which way does the wind blow?
So was that still now? Is this a recent crop?
That was, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah, pretty recent. The next one. Yeah, well, now we return to fish. This is the fish market in Fukushima. And the fishermen are only allowed to go out 10 or 11 days of the month. The fleet is only 1/4 the size it used to be. The fishermen are subsidized by the government. They're paid not to fish. Out of the roughly 200 species, 44 species at one point or another were declared too radioactive to eat. All of the freshwater fish in Fukushima are too radioactive to eat. Next one.
But the fish still survive and reproduce and.
Yeah, the fish are still there. Fish are still there. They don't have 2 heads yet. Yeah, here's one of the fishermen I spend time with. Every time I go, I check in with him. He's generally, he looks relatively at peace or happy in this photo, but he usually ends up yelling very loudly about the incredible injustices and the government is treating the ocean like a sewer and so on. Because the cooling water from Fukushima is being dumped into the ocean. You know, that started roughly 3 years ago, that the cooling water was being dumped. Next one.
Does radiation in fish and animals per se concentrate as it goes on, like some other
Well,
pesticides that
there's a
concentrate?
good, you try to get a government grant and study that. It's known as bioaccumulation.
Yeah.
Yes, it is thought to exist. Very, very little research has been done on it. You're not going to get a grant for it now. Somebody was asking about humans. I now touch on the subject of thyroid cancer. This is plaintiff number 8. Plaintiff number 8 is a young woman who has thyroid cancer, had her thyroid removed. She can only be shown from the back and only referred to as plaintiff 8 because of the incredible volume of hate mail and vituperation and death threats that would be directed at her were she to be identified. Because thyroid cancer, it represents a kind of weakness. It's considered an attack on the state even to mention it. And she's currently engaged in a plaintiff number 8 in a trial. Thyroid cancer in Fukushima used to be 1 in a million. It's now 200 cases out of 380,000. The government is fighting the case. They're fighting, you can't prove that the thyroid cancer is caused by Fukushima. You can't prove that this is not overdiagnosis. The government is going to win their case. It's very brave of plaintiff 8 to carry on. This is interesting because this sculpture was done by a Ukrainian artist, and it shows the medication that thyroid cancer patients have to take for the rest of their lives. These blister packs. So you get your thyroid removed, you get the glands removed, you have a necklace around your neck, and then you have to take this medication for the entire rest of your life. Yeah.
Yes. Now, all these people that were shoveling the radioactive dirt, were they wearing radiation
No,
badges?
of course
I
not.
saw
No.
protection.
They were recruited from Vietnam and the Philippines, and they're hired 8 levels down by the mafia. They're subcontractors.
So you
They're
can
not-
assume they all have some
Nothing.
type of cancer.
Well, you can't prove it, ma'am. Excuse me. Yeah. Next one. And so here's what Fukushima looks like today. It looks like an enormous tank farm holding the water that's keeping those fuel pools and keeping the reactors from basically blowing up. So there's this huge tank farm of cooling water, that the Japanese are now releasing into the ocean. And next one. Yeah, here's the scale of these this tank farm. And then the next one. This is the pipe. This is the pipe that's being used to dump the water into the ocean. The Tokyo Electric Power Company, this is an old story for all of you in the audience, you old timers. Everyone with gray hair, you know this story. The people running the reactors will lie to you. They'll cheat, they'll steal, they will cover up any accidents, errors, faults, they'll fake up their data, they'll do all that stuff, right? Well, the Tokyo Electric Power Company got caught lying about the water that was being dumped into the ocean. They pretended it was clean. They pretended that it contained only tritium, when in fact it was, I believe a whistleblower revealed that it was in fact contaminated with 62 radionuclides, including strontium and plutonium and cesium and all sorts of really dangerous stuff. And anyway, there is no outside investigation. No one is verifying exactly the condition of the water that's being dumped into the Pacific. Next one. Yes, here you have the quote-unquote happy soil from Fukushima being dumped into the flower bed of the Prime Minister in Tokyo. And the Prime Minister has taken the soil from Fukushima as a symbolic act. They originally wanted to dump it into a park in Tokyo, and the citizens of Tokyo. Next slide. This is not to say that there's not a huge anti-nuclear movement in Japan, and this happens to be in Korea. There's a huge movement, but we all know that even when we gather in large numbers and raise our voices are not always heard. But anyway, on that note,
You should finish your slides. How many more do you have?
I have no more slides.
Oh, great.
So, and I imagine you people want to talk about fusion, fission, SMRs, the human health, radioactivity, or your reactor down the street.
Well, why don't we open it up to questions now? People have been...
There's a question right behind you.
So sorry.
No problem. Thanks for this chilling presentation. So just the last thing you were talking about, the movement. For a country, the only country, right, in the world that's been nuked, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, for that country, which was, that's almost blown itself up, 15 years, I'm curious how you see the limitations to the movement, to stop it, the resistance. Are people buying it? How does this go down, continue not to, robustly?
Of all the countries in the world to build nuclear reactors, Japan is the least likely. And I don't want to dilate on it, but this is in good part due to the intervention of our CIA. They had an agent, they had someone in Japan working on their behalf who happened to own the largest newspaper in Japan, happened to be head of the Atomic Energy Agency in Japan, happened to have introduced baseball in Japan. This is a guy named Matsutari Shiriki, working on behalf of the CIA, financed by the CIA. He held a big Atoms for Peace exhibition in Japan and managed to swing the country round to embracing this technology, which is insane for a large number of reasons, but particularly since Japan has more than 1,000 earthquakes a year. It's on the ring of fire, where all those earthquakes occur. And, they just restarted one of the reactors that was closed after Fukushima, the KK reactor on the west coast of Japan. And that reactor is even more dangerous than Fukushima. It's built on what the Japanese call tofu. It's built on loose soil and sand that is kind of like tofu, and it has already been shut down once before because of an earthquake, and is a boiling water reactor, a GE reactor, and they just restarted it. And, run the numbers. Run the numbers. This is a land-poor country. $1 trillion is my estimate for the, it's not called cleanup. Cleanup is the wrong term. You don't clean up from a nuclear disaster. You sequester the radionuclides. They get put someplace. They do not get cleaned up. But anyway, for Japan to take that gamble with this reactor on the West Coast is, I think it's insane. But I would not be allowed to say that in Japan. I wouldn't be allowed to talk that way. They have, censorship is very strict in Japan. They have a State Secrets Act that, and they have, they also can control what people say by claiming reputational damage. If I damage the reputation of Fukushima, then I'm liable for, let's say the fish from Fukushima cannot be sold in Japan, in China or Russia. I've caused reputational damage. I'm liable for the damage, the economic damage to Fukushima by maligning its reputation. Well, I don't think I'm maligning its reputation. I think I'm merely elaborating on what I consider to be facts. But there are other ways that information can be censored. There's a hand way in the back there.
So, I mean, aren't you liable at this point for sharing all this information with us? Like, how far does their prosecutorial reach go?
I think Brattleboro, aren't you a free zone here? I think all sorts of radicals have sought cover here in Brattleboro.
Well, George Bush can't set foot in this.
Really?
Yeah.
But, I mean, how does this play into your ability to return to the country? Are they, do they grant you a visa? Do they interrogate you? What's the story?
My book has not been translated into Japanese. There was a translation in process, and the translator pulled out.
They would be liable.
Yes, they would be liable, and no publisher would pick it up, and so on. So it's one of the reasons why I thought it was important to publish my book. But and I would like to see it translated into Japanese, but I'm not sure that's going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, in your travels to Japan, how did you avoid becoming radioactive?
Well, I showed you those laboratories, right? And Takanori Kobayashi, his wife ran the ryokan, the inn where I stayed, and I can assure you all of the food had been tested. And parts of they're actually slightly outside of the nuclear exclusion zone. I didn't eat that mushroom, and the first time I went to Fukushima, I loaded up my car with rice balls and my own water supply, and I planned to live on that for several weeks. Well, it turned out that people were testing their food. They were pretty sure that the food was safe enough to eat, and so on.
The follow-up, is there massive migration to Hokkaido?
Well, I think Hokkaido has some reactors. And I think Hokkaido has been toying with the idea of becoming, of welcoming nuclear waste. So I'm not so sure. It's also very close to Vladivostok, isn't it? And Russia, and yeah, contested territory. I don't know if you want to move to Hokkaido. I think it would be better to move to Brattleboro. But yeah.
Is there any data at all about cancer rates or how people are faring?
Well, I quiz my scientific friends on this all the time. And they remind me, how many years did it take before we actually nailed down conclusively that smoking cigarettes caused lung cancer? That was fought for years, right? And that's a direct, that's pretty direct intake result. So this kind of thing, exposure to radiation, we know that the cancer rates around the world have doubled over the past, 20, 30 years, whatever it thyroid cancer rates around Chernobyl are astronomical, and other heart failure and other organ failure and cancers and so on. But even around Chernobyl, you will find the rabid pro-nuclear propagandists who are populating our airwaves pretending that only 36 people died at Chernobyl. I hear that all the time, only 30, and no one died at Fukushima. You'll hear that all the time, when in fact, the numbers are probably more likely in the hundreds of thousands, certainly the tens of thousands around Chernobyl. And who knows what the results are going to be around Fukushima. But, prompt fatalities, this is what is known as prompt fatalities, people who die as a result of a bomb going off or a reactor blowing up. That's not the only disastrous consequence of nuclear energy. 160,000 people in a nuclear exclusion zone that's turned into ghost towns, and their entire lives uprooted, and having to return to the family cemetery wearing a Tyvek suit against radiation. This is a kind of disaster that has its own consequences. You don't even need prompt fatalities. So I think it's going to take a while before we figure out. There was just that study out of Harvard, right, about studying relationship, increases in cancer rates around nuclear reactors. A study out of Harvard. Well, my goodness, why is this only being done just now? And why hasn't this been done internationally, or at least nationally? Or why are we just getting this information? And where's the follow-up? What happened to their grant? I presume they no longer have a grant.
There are studies around French reactors which kind of prove around a 5% increase generally in cancer rates.
Yes, the French, and the French have also been doing good work on bioaccumulation. Right. The French put all the reactors along the Loire River Valley. And so the Loire River Valley is quite full of radionuclides at the moment, and tritium and all the rest of it. And the French have been doing good studies on that river valley.
And twice now there have been studies approved for the National Academy of Sciences for like $8 million, which is like a spit in the bucket, and they've been canceled summarily as too expensive for results which would prove nothing.
Right. Yeah. These are things. Well, my friend Timothy Mousseau, who's published a couple of hundred papers on Chernobyl, and has done astoundingly good research, cannot get grant money. He now has to involve himself. He can only get to nuclear exclusion zones with projects involving the neutering of dogs. Apparently, there's a group is interested in adopting the radioactive dogs out of Fukushima and taking them to Chicago or something like that. I don't know. But in terms of actual studying what's going on in Chernobyl, he cannot get funded to do that.
The people who were in the exclusion zone, did they ever get compensated? Was there any subsidies for people?
Yes, there were housing subsidies that for the 160,000 people who lost their homes, and the housing subsidies were ended in 2017. And they were ended in order to force people back into Fukushima. So it's working in two directions in Japan. The government is trying to force people back into Fukushima, and at the same time they're taking the radioactive soil and spreading it around Japan. So if the entire country ends up looking like Fukushima, then there's no Fukushima.
Have they actually located the actual remains of the nuclear cores, or is it all exploded around?
The excellent question. The question is, have they actually located, do they know where the melted nuclear fuel is located? And the answer is no. They have no idea. all of the early robots that were sent into the reactors got the radioactivity that was so high that they died. They got fried. Their electronics gave out. 15 years afterward, they have no idea where the fuel is located. They have no idea what condition it's in. They have no idea how deep it's burrowed into the ground. They have no idea how far it's scattered, far and wide. And they've only managed to remove a bit of fuel as large as a grain of rice. And so they think that in the next 30 or 40 years, they're going to be decommissioning these reactors. They're not even close. And everyone suspects that it'll likely last 100 years, and they may never succeed in locating and removing the radioactive fuel.
So eventually it will all go into the ocean.
Eventually it will all go into the ocean, or they'll have to build some kind of Chernobyl-like containment around the reactors. They'll make it look high-tech, and they'll paint it very nicely, and it'll look really good. None of this concrete sarcophagus stuff.
Yeah, some people might not know what they did with Chernobyl.
Chernobyl, the first thing they did after, it burned, and it spewed huge amounts of radioactivity all over Europe. The radioactive cloud was first discovered up around the North Pole in Norway or Sweden. Russia denied that the reactors had melted down and exploded, but the Swedes blew the whistle on that. And the radioactive contamination spread all over Europe, except if you look at it, it stopped right at the border of France. No radioactivity went in. And if you look in the other direction, no radioactivity went into Russia, because the Russians actually seeded the clouds and made it rain over Belarus, which is why Belarus is incredibly hard hit and filled with ghost towns and a huge load of radioactive damage. But anyway, after Chernobyl, after they put out the fire of Chernobyl, they dumped a huge load of concrete onto the reactor that had exploded. And it got the name of a sarcophagus, a tomb. It looked like a tomb, a huge concrete tomb. And when that began to leak, then the European Union donated $1.5 billion to build a high-tech facility, another cover. So you have concrete cover, and then you have another high-tech cover, and then that got a hole blown in it, probably from a Russian drone. A year ago, something like that. So that $1.5 billion down the drain, that's no longer working. The sarcophagus is leaking. Europe is quite vulnerable. It's also incredibly vulnerable because Europe's largest reactor is now in the middle of a war zone, right?
But they did isolate the elephant's foot. They were able
Yes.
to immobilize the
In that case, they actually did locate. When an atomic reactor melts down, it forms this huge mass of radioactive material that in that case is in the shape of an elephant's foot. And so they actually know where that's located. They have no idea about Fukushima, and probably Fukushima, it's more likely just scattered everywhere. It was blown to high heaven, which means when it comes to so-called decommissioning the reactor, you don't have an elephant's foot to remove, you have the entire reactor to remove, just like that chimney.
I'm looking at the coastline there, I'm wondering, like, has anyone tracked the radiation as it goes through the ocean? Like, where
Well,
does
yes,
it end up?
the Mother's Radiation Laboratory actually has a boat and is actually collecting the water and is actually invested in the very expensive equipment for studying strontium and plutonium. But my goodness, if it weren't for the Mother's Radiation Lab, nobody would be doing that work.
So how can they exist? How does Japan's government not close them down? Or how, I'm just surprised.
Hang on
It seems
down.
as how
And aren't
controlled they
funded?
are that.
They're funded by the government.
No, they're not
No,
funded by the
they're not.
government.
They're
They're funded privately by donations. Well, Japan is a democracy. I mean, it's not, we're not talking China or Vietnam or something like that. It's a democracy.
Where have ocean currents taken us? Where have the ocean currents taken us?
Oh,
Everywhere.
That's an excellent question, because I showed you that fisherman, right? Well, he's the guy who caught he fishes. Wait, do we have a map? He fishes out of Shinchi Harbor, which is 37 miles to the north, which is where he caught a radioactive rockfish that was something like 1,000 times more radioactive than the limit for fish. I think it's off the map. It's off. So here are the reactors, and you know the currents can go up the coast. They can go 37. That rockfish was caught 37 miles to the north of the reactors. So
Eventually it goes across to the U.S.
it goes. We pulled up samples in the United States from Fukushima. Right, and apparently you can date your wine collection from radioactivity. You know about that? Oh. Yeah, your Sonoma wines, you could radioactively date them to when Chernobyl blew up or when Fukushima blew up.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
You mentioned it a couple of times, but what's the status of fusion?
The status of?
Status of fusion reactors. Are we close, or
Yeah.
are they?
All right. Now,
Can you talk about Daniel?
I'm just an investigative reporter. When you really, there are a lot of physicists in this audience here, and a lot of knowledgeable people. Fusion reactors. You know the joke about fusion reactors.
30 years.
They're always 30 years away.
Right.
Yeah.
They used to be 50, so we're close.
No, they're actually no closer. So,
Talk about Daniel Jasby, was the person in your book?
yes. Well, Daniel Jasby's an interesting character. You know, he ran the Princeton Fusion Reactor Laboratory for his entire life. Then he retired, and he wrote 2 articles for the Bulletin and the Atomic Scientist, blowing the whistle on fusion reactors. Fusion reactors, first of all, they're more dangerous than fission reactors. They require fission reactors in order to get the tritium to run the fusion reactors. The first time you flip the switch on a fusion reactor, it could act like a thermonuclear bomb and blow up. They produce more radioactive waste than fission reactors. He runs down the entire list of all of the propaganda that you've been told about the sun. We're going to be harnessing the sunlight, and he blows the whistle on all of it. You should look him up. Jassby, I think is how he spells his name. And he ends by saying we have fusion reactors. They currently exist. They're called thermonuclear bombs.
Yeah. No, we have a fusion reactor operating at the relatively safe distance of 93 million miles away, that's producing all the power we need.
There you go. That's another fusion reactor.
That is what a fusion reactor is.
So my final word on that is that among the propaganda that we're getting at the moment is a huge amount of what are called PowerPoint reactors. Right? Little sketches, little drawings. They look really neat, really clean, very nice buildings. They're just PowerPoints. And you can make an entire living these days, an entire business model, just by harvesting government subsidies. I mean, didn't Donald Trump just, isn't he in the fusion power reactor business?
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken?
Yes.
Yeah. If Donald Trump is building fusion reactors, you know there's money in it.
And Peter Thiel just got $900 million to begin reprocessing nuclear fuel, something he's never even been involved with.
So-called reprocessing nuclear fuel. That's another complete propagandistic boondoggle. We currently, the French, what you get when you reprocess nuclear fuel is plutonium. Well, the world is swimming in plutonium. And I just showed you the picture of the reactor that was burning mixed oxide fuel when it blew up, which is exceedingly dangerous. The world has more plutonium than it knows what to do with. The French have so much plutonium, they're sending it to Russia. The British have so much plutonium, they've stopped reprocessing. This whole idea of reprocessing fuel to produce plutonium is absolute nuts. Not to mention, that's the stuff you build bombs out of, which is why the United States stopped reprocessing nuclear fuel. And the whole entire idea of starting it up again makes zero sense.
It makes as much sense as denying climate change to make it go away.
Yes. What did I see today that the atmospheric laboratory outside of Boulder, Colorado is being leveled. They're tearing it down brick by brick to prevent any more news about global warming.
That'll work.
Climate alarmism.
Climate alarmism.
That's the,
Yeah.
rationale.
I think we have time for one more question, and then you want to ask Meryl to just come up for a moment to say, Marvin, yeah.
3 reactors were not operating when units 1 through 3 were operating at the time. 4 through 6 were not operating.
That's correct.
4 blew up, but what happened to 5 and 6? Are they operating now?
5 and 6, you know, when you count Fukushima 1 and Fukushima 2, there are actually 10 reactors. Anyway, 3 of them are running and blow up and melt down. 1 of them is not running and it blows up.
That's
Two others, actually, they were built more recently. They actually had waterproofed the pumps.
Good idea.
Something as simple as building a waterproof pump. And they were built on slightly higher ground. They were built over here. Slightly higher ground, waterproof pumps. The wave mainly hit here. They didn't blow up. So.
Are they operating?
No, they were shut down.
Everything's.
No, the government, they might very well get the bright idea to restart the reactors at Fukushima, but I doubt it. It was such a trauma for the country. I don't think they could.
So there's actually 6 there, and then you said maybe 4 others at another site.
Yeah, there were 6 here, and then down the coast, 15 miles, it was Fukushima 2. Daiichi means 1. This is Fukushima Daiichi F1, and then Fukushima Daini, Fukushima number 2 is down the coast. And they were in the process of building 2 more reactors when this happened, by the way. They were just about ready to start breaking ground on 2 more reactors. Anyway, if someone has an announcement to make.
Yeah, and we're gonna, there's some food here. Thomas is, here for, I don't know how long you can last, but there'll be time for some questions and you can just have a little bit of a reception. But Meryl Sovner. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you all for coming. Thank you for coming the past few years. If you've been a part of our events here or elsewhere, or had some of our food, or seen our live streams or any of our posters and flyers hung around town, Susan Healy has been a major part of making that happen, and we wanted to make sure we thank her tonight. This will be her swan song with the Windham World Affairs Council. She is going to actually retire. 3 or 4 years ago, Lissa recruited her to be our first staff person upon her retirement as a social studies teacher for many years. And we wanted to make sure we stopped and thanked her and recognized her hard work. So thank you, Susan. We collected for a gift certificate to everyone's books because now you'll have ample time to actually be retired and read, and we know how much you enjoy reading. So
Thank you so much. I moved here, and within 6 months, this is my community, and I just landed in the best place on the planet. Thank you.
And with that, I think that we end our program. We have a little bit of a reception now, and we should also mention that we have hired a new outreach director to take Susan's place. Won't fill our shoes, but we're so excited. Gigi Rodriguez has started, and she's going to be terrific, I think, so you'll meet her at future events. Thank you so much. Thank you for the people online for listening tonight. Have a good evening.